Hello and welcome to this edition of Consciousness Raising Online. Hey, good morning, Clyde. Good afternoon, Clyde. Are you, I see, thank you for letting me know you can hear this. But are you on the page I linked to are you on our regular page? Are you at our normal link or did you go to the link I set up? Okay, because what's happening is that I wasn't able to get to the link. Oh, okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Uh, I did open the chat, so if you want to, you can chat on the chat section of YouTube. But this is cool too because I can see both of them. Um, what I'm going to do today is a little bit different in that I'm going to deal with two different things, but I'm going to show how they are extensions. One is the extension of the other. Okay. Um, See, what we're dealing with right now that's really affecting us is an attack against us, men, women, and children. Okay. And I'll get to that in a few minutes because it's so deep and it hit me a couple of weeks ago that it's actually not new. What's happening is not new. And I realize it's part of white flight. And because of white fright, it is now white fight. Okay, let's take a step back first and take a quick look at white flight. Um, in the 1950s, millions of middle class Americans left the cities for the suburbs. At the same time, millions of black people from the South migrated to the cities. I don't like how they put this on this graph. Millions of African American rural poor. Um, but I will say millions of African Americans or black people from the South migrated to the northern cities and out west too. And in the cities, the northern cities especially, when black folks came in and they began to spread out in the cities, white folks began to run like crazy, and we called it the white flight. What wasn't talked about, and still really isn't well understood, I don't think, by most people, is that the white flight was more than just white people getting out, moving out. They drained the cities that they left. They drained them of resources, money, and taxes. Where that hurt, I'll give you a good example. In Illinois, the way public education is paid for is through property taxes, which means that if you live in a neighborhood with really good property taxes, you're going to have more money for your schools. If you live in a neighborhood where there's poor property taxes or the property taxes are not as good or as high as other areas, your schools are going to be suffering because of that. And so we're going to look at some of that in a minute. But we need to understand, I think, the serious. Oh, okay, thank you, Clyde. We need to take a look at how much white flight did to our cities. Because it wasn't just that they packed up and left. And we've talked about this before, and there's been other evidence talking about it. But see, when you look at it in depth, and you look at also how the federal government aided and abetted their leaving, then we better understand that this wasn't just haphazard. It wasn't just coincidence. White people left the cities as part of an overall plan, as part of an overall program to allow white people to live where they did not have to deal with black people. And they got help and assistance of all types from the government, from the Federal Housing Authority Administration, the FHA, and the Veterans Administration. Okay, both of them. And think about it, the Veterans Administration, yeah, they helped a lot of veterans, as long as they weren't black or brown, to be able to get housing. We talked about that a few weeks back. Okay, and they reshaped the residential housing market of the United States. And understand how deep that is. They reshaped it. As you see up here in this graph, um, let's look at it more closely. They guaranteed the value of collateral for loans made by private banks so that down payments of 10% and extended repayment periods of 25 to 30 years became the norm. See, most people don't know this. They think that it's always been 10%. It's always been 25 or 30-year mortgages. No, they set that up for white people. And it allowed them to get into houses or into homes dirt cheap and easy, and made it made it very easy for them to stay there, to pay off a mortgage 30 years. Okay? And this is another part. It required a professional appraisal of insured properties. Now, again, people think that that's always been. No, it hasn't always been that way. Back in the day, back before this, if you bought a home, you didn't have to get a professional appraisal. It was whatever the seller said the property was worth and wanted to sell it to you for. And so you bargained. Okay, y'all bargained. Now, when they started requiring a professional appraisals, that was the banks doing it, mortgage companies, it included a rating of the neighborhood. Okay? So it was no longer just the idea of well, you look at the property itself. No, let's look at the whole neighborhood. And that's when you got into redlining and all that other stuff. Took into account the size of the lot, separation from existing structures, and that eliminated from eligibility a lot of inner city dwellings like row houses and houses that were attached to each other. Okay? The vast majority of FHA and VA mortgages went to white middle class suburbs because you had an explosion of suburbs, white people getting the hell out of town. Also, this huge investment on the federal government's level of highway construction. Yeah, so you can't leave that out too, because they built all these highways from the suburbs to the city to make it convenient and easy for these middle class white folks to move out to the suburbs and still work in the city. They did a job on us, y'all. Did a job. And we still suffer from that today. Now let's understand even more about white flight, because we've got to understand that in order to see. White flight was not just the idea that they left. They also, and I'm talking about white people, they also did some other little things. When the Supreme Court ordered desegregation of the schools, public schools, what we saw come out of that was not only resistance in terms of some communities, white communities that were, they were doggish about it. They said, no, we're not integrating these schools. We're not desegregating these schools. But they also started doing something else. They also started privatizing things. Um, they started charter schools and they started schools affiliated with the religion to make them private. Okay. And that did several things to the public system. It took money and resources away from the public systems. Now, I'm gonna say something here that um, probably has not been said enough. Um, there was a process that this country went through where certain words became code words. You see, there was a time, for an example, when the park district in a particular city had public swimming pools. Okay. When black folks started protesting and said, wait, we want to desegregate these public pools because we're not allowed to swim in these pools, and they're public pools that we pay taxes and pay for these pools, then what white folks did, they said, okay, well, go ahead and have that public pool. We're going to set up a private pool. And what started happening, they did it with the schools, they did it with the libraries, they did it to anything that was public, hospitals, even housing. And public became a code word for black and brown and poor. So that now, what had been a really good thing, public housing, paid for by tax dollars and gave opportunities for people to have nice housing. Now they became public housing. That's where the black folks, poor folks live, right? Um, Public libraries. Oh well, that's where the poor folks go to. Public libraries. Uh, Public schools, same thing. Uh, they started deteriorating. So you had public housing, public libraries, public health, public hospitals. All of the things that got started getting labeled public was for poor and black people. Think about it. Public transportation. And in a lot of cases, it's very set up where public transportation, you got one set of public transportation for the poor folks and another set of public transportation that's damn near private for the white folks. And so public became a slur. And what happened was white people built a private culture so that they could protect themselves from having to interact with anybody other than white people. And it's so deep that today, um, 8 out of every 10 white people in this country live in a community that is a 99% white because they don't want to live with anybody other than white people. Now, let's look at this chart right quick. Um, this is a chart that deals with white flight from 1960 to 1970. Okay, the blue is 1960, the red is 1970. Look at this. Let's start up at the top. St. Louis, it went from 71% white population down to 58.6%. Chicago, it lost about 10 points of percentage of white population. Detroit, was that about 15%? Boston, oh, they lost a lot more. 90 down to 70 by 18%. New York City, about 9 or 10%. Philadelphia, about 9 or 10%. DC, look at DC. They went from 45% down to 27%. That's almost, what let's see, 44. Yeah, they lost half the population. That's when it went to what? Being Chocolate City. Atlanta, 61 down to 48. New Orleans, 62 down to 54. Dallas, not a lot, but still about 6%. LA, about 5%. The bigger the city, the bigger the percentage, the bigger the number. Okay? So it was not something that was just an illusion. White flight was serious. It was serious. And what they were doing, they were moving away from black people because of white fright. They were afraid, they were made to be afraid of black people interacting with them, living next to them, working next to them. Because, see, they took a lot of jobs out of the city when they moved out. Corporations fled to the suburbs, and white people went with them. So you left cities where you had just a shell of what had been there before in terms of industry. So now you got more and more black people, but fewer and fewer resources. Here's another chart. This is from 1990 to 2010 in the largest 100 largest metropolitan areas. Percentage of residents residing in the suburbs. So now whites went from 1990 from 74% living in the suburbs to 2010, it jumped up maybe 4 points to 78%. Asians went from 54 to 62. But we're talking about a small physical number, though. Don't let that fool you. Hispanics from 47 to 59. And we started out the lowest, right? We still went from 37 to about half of the black folks in the country living in a suburban area in 100 largest metropolitan areas. What we got to understand, though, is that a lot of the suburbs, when it came to black people, they was post suburbs. They were segregated suburbs. Yeah. And what the white folks would do was um, they would refuse bond issues if it was going to pay for public spaces that would desegregate or allow black people to interact with them even more. See, and we don't pay attention a lot of times to bond issues, but that's how stuff gets paid for: schools, parks, libraries, transportation. And so when white folks would be voting on those things, if they thought it was going to help black folks have more access, they vote them down. I watched it happen dozens of times. Um, oh, thank you, Clyde. I'm sorry. But when I mentioned earlier about how the homes were bought, Clyde says, my first two homes were purchased by proposal and counter proposal. Yes, thank you, Clyde. Um, and that's how business was done. And that's why they changed it so that we would not be able to do that. It froze us out by them having that, by us having to get a professional appraisal, which was almost always a white man, who would come in and rate the property according to whatever is most advantage to the white person. And if it was done in such a way that the bank or the mortgage company could then say, well, Mr. Clyde, I'm sorry, but your credit is not good enough for that neighborhood. That neighborhood is in a neighborhood where we don't loan any money. Like, well, wait a minute, hold up. My money's good, right? Well, yeah, your money's good, just not good in that neighborhood. Oh man. So we got the other thing was that in the 90s, we saw a surge of suburban Republicans, suburban Republican power. because they surrounded the cities, which if they were getting a sizable black population in the city, most likely in most cases, or virtually all those cases, the the the, the black voters were Democrat voters. And so as a counteraction, the suburbs that surrounded these cities, they became more and more Republican. Yeah, it's deep. Let's look at this map. This map a little bit closer. Um, Now, in this case, we're looking at the 2000 and the 2010 census. And as you look, you can come back and look at it another time, but just want to point out that in a lot of places, there were white city losses and suburb gains. Okay. In some cases, there were white city and suburb gains, but in most cases, there were white suburbs and city losses. Okay. In a few cases, there were white city gains and suburb losses, but it was a lot of fluctuation. Look, the point is that it was a lot of fluctuation, and we just trying to find somewhere to live. Okay. And we thought, this is the cold part, we thought that all of this was based on the numbers and our credit and this. And we were all the time struggling to be acceptable, where our credit rating was acceptable, our credit score, our history of paying our bills, all those kinds of things. And the cold part is it didn't matter. What mattered was the bigger picture. Were the white folks willing at that point to allow us to move into that neighborhood? If they weren't, we wasn't getting that mortgage. We would be stuck in wherever we were at. Okay. All right, let me see. Let me take a look at some specifics here because I want to get through this quickly. I want you to look at these real quick. These are special maps that I set up. This is a map of Chicago. Now, when you see the green, it's light green, that's black people. Okay, the blue, that's white people, and the orange, that's Hispanics. Okay, so Chicago has quite a few. Now I'm gonna show you something here. This is a rich poor map. Okay, the red is poor folks. The blue is well to do. If you notice, virtually all of the poor is in the city. All right. And now I'm gonna put this map back up again. You see how close it is where the black people are and the Hispanics are? Yeah, that's where the money ain't. That's where the money ain't. Okay? I'm gonna show you even closer. It's a race map, close up. The blue in this case, that's the blue is the black folks, the orange is the Hispanics, and the red all around that's the white folks. See how they surround the city? That's the suburb. Those are the suburbs. Yeah. See, this is not an accident. It's not an accident. It was designed and set up that way. I'll show you another one. This is LA. Okay? Again, in this situation, the green is black people. The orange is Latinos. The red are Asians, and the blue is white people. All right. Here's the rich poor map. Okay. That's the rich poor map. See how it's concentrated? Look back at the other one. We'll go back to the other one so you can see where I'm talking about. See where, take a look at where the poorest people are. Bam. That's where the black and the orange. Okay. Okay, thank you, Clyde. The pictorials make it crystal clear. Good. Okay. Excellent. Let's take a look at one more city. Well, let's see. Okay. How about Philadelphia? Here's Philadelphia. Okay. And that whole area down there. That's the race map. So you see the green, that's black people. The orange, that's Hispanics. The little bit of red, that's Asians. And all the blue surrounding it, that's the white people. All right, see now, see where that is? All right, here's the rich poor map. That's the rich poor map. Yeah. You want to see the other one again so you can see where it is? Here's the race map. Bam. Isn't that funny how these cities just have the poor people and fits the poor folks is the people of color? One more time. All right. Even a city like New York. Here's another one. New York City. Green is black people. Red, that's them Asians. And the orange, that's those Hispanics. And the blue is the white folks. Again, surrounding all the people of color. And now look at the rich poor map. See, it follows the same patterns. You know, wherever we go, it's the same patterns, right? Let's see. Oh, now this one I want to show you a little bit deeper. St. Louis, because of course we saw Ferguson. We saw Ferguson explode a couple of years ago. All right. Now let's look at this. This is you don't see hardly any um yeah, I don't see hardly any I don't see hardly any Asians and I don't see hardly any Hispanics. Look at that. All right. Just green, which is black people, and blue, which is white people. And they really got them sectioned off. Now look at this. Now this is going to blow your mind. This is St. Louis in the 1940s to the 50s. In this case, the black is black people and the white is white people. Okay, that's St. Louis, 1940s to the 1950s. Okay, here's St. Louis, 1950s going towards the 1960s. All right, you want to see the contrast? Let's go back one time because they're starting to move out now. See, got them very well contained, right? Yeah. So now we get into the 60s, going into the 60s, and they're starting to spread out now, right? Whoa. And the white folks, they didn't like that at all. Now we get to the 1990s to the 2000s. Bam! Whoa, Lord. They're everywhere. And where did the white people go? White people seem to be leaving the whole area. Okay? And now here's St. Louis in 2010. Bam! Ain't that something? Yeah. Yeah. In other words, red is the decrease of white people, and the orange is a decrease of black people. The black is the increase of black people, and the white is the increase of white people. And now that gives us a better idea of why Ferguson had been treated like a revenue source, penalizing the people through petty fines. And I'm glad it happened, because now, come to find out, a lot of urban centers are like that. They do that in Chicago. And one of the things they do in Chicago that we just finding out about is tickets, parking tickets. For years when I was growing up, you could get parking tickets all day long. They didn't matter. They didn't collect on them. I knew people that had stacks of parking tickets in their glove compartment in the back seat of their car. Nobody ever paid parking tickets. Then, about 20 years ago, I guess it was, somebody said to the mayor, look here, we can get a lot more dough if we just start collecting on them parking tickets. And virtually overnight, they started pressing us about paying parking tickets. And if you didn't pay, they had this brand new thing for us called the Denver Boot. And what would happen is, you didn't pay the tickets, they would put what was called a boot on your car. It's a device that went on your wheel of your car so you couldn't move your car. And man, that messed up a lot of people. But it forced them to start paying them tickets. And parking tickets became a major revenue generator. Now, to make it worse, they started lowering the number of tickets to get a boot. Because it got down to the point where now I think it's now 3 tickets you can get the boot. And it also, they changed the laws to that they can suspend your license. Now your driver's license wasn't necessarily attached to your car registration. So that if you had tickets in the city, they couldn't mess with your license, which was issued by the Secretary of State. But they changed the law so that now you get 3 tickets. They can put a boot on your car, and they can have your license suspended. So even if it ain't your car, or you're not driving that car, as what happened with my mother, my very own mother, my brother, for over a year, was driving my mother's car downtown Chicago and parking it right in front of the building where he worked, because he didn't feel like parking it. And he was usually late, and got, about 50 tickets, which he didn't pay. And my mother didn't know it until one day she drove into the city, because she lived in the suburbs, hardly came into the city at all. One day she came into the city for something and got pulled over, and they arrested my mama, took her to jail for all these unpaid parking tickets, because they were on her car, and now it was attached to her license. So she ended up having to pay them tickets, set up a payment plan, so that my brother could pay them tickets, which he didn't do. So she ended up paying them eventually, taking out a loan to pay for them damn tickets. Yeah. So they do generators. Then they started thinking in my hometown, Chicago, of of putting up these cameras at stoplights, and the cameras would be timed that if you ran a stoplight, it would take the picture of your car and its license plate, and they would send you a ticket in the mail. That's been crazy. So all these things are generators, and they hurt people in the city, and especially poor people, the most. Then they started this one. You have to have a city, you have to have a state license plate. And in most cities, you have to have a city sticker that goes in your window. Chicago is dogmatic about it because not only do you have to have a city sticker for your car if you're driving it, if your car is parked on a city street, you got to have a city sticker. Okay? If you have your car parked in a public parking lot, they can give you a ticket for that if you don't have a city sticker. And they got special patrols that don't do nothing but drive up and down the streets with a special kind of machine that can read the license plates on 10, 15 cars at a time and run it through the system, and they'll tell you if you got a hit or not. And the boot squads do the same thing. They're out there night and day looking for cars in public spaces that are bootable, and they'll boot your car. Well, they had such a surge in people with boots and parking tickets and all of that, fines and all of that. The bankruptcies went up astronomically with poor black and brown people. Okay? So you have people say, well, they should just go ahead and pay the tickets. No, it's the system that was rigged. Okay, now, why did I go through all of that? Let me move to the next level. This was what had occurred in the past, the white flight. But now what happened, because we went through the phase with all kinds of stuff, right? But now white people started getting tired of having to be nice to us. And so with a certain 45 president, he campaigned on the idea of, he said, make America great again, but it really make America white again. We have been hearing this rhetoric for a while about taking our country back. What did that mean? Well, in the past, what white folks did, they closed down the libraries, the pools, and the theaters, and they tried to protect themselves from having to interact with anybody other than white people. But it deals with this. White people wanting to control the public space. See, white people's attitude is that the public space belongs to them, not us. And you need to be in your rightful place. There was a time we had to step off the curb if a white person was coming down the sidewalk. Okay? And so what we are seeing now is a resurgence of that taking back the public space. Now I'm going to give you some examples and let you see it for yourself, how this works.
What's going on?
Now she don't want to talk.
She doesn't want to talk now.
It's illegal to have a charcoal grill in the park here.
What kind of grill are you not allowed, and why are you so bent out of shape over them being here?
Because it causes extra money from our city to do things when children get injured because of improperly disposed of hose.
What's going on? It's okay.
Video of the confrontation shared on Facebook, now seen by over 2 million people.
You're doing your job, but the restaurant is not doing its job. Because if she's positive that she's seen us, we haven't been there. This is my first time here.
After an hour into their meal, Alexis Bryson and a friend say they were approached by a police officer and Applebee's manager.
He refuses to move his car because he supposedly does not think that I live here.
When Dr. Nene Aguacha returned home to her gated townhome community in Buckhead, she was met with an unexpected roadblock.
This guy has been in front of my car now for the last 10, 15 minutes. He didn't believe me. He kept on accusing me of trying to tailgate him.
The exchange went on for about 30 minutes, despite repeated pleas for the man to move.
He said, "You don't belong here." I told him, this is where I live. I pointed it out to him.
The man called police.
When she arrived, the gentleman proceeded to say once again that I was trespassing and didn't belong on the property. And, I said, actually, sir, I do. And I used my gate clicker to click the gate open.
The man allegedly told the officer he was trying to protect the community after a rash of HVAC robberies. But Dr. Aguacha thinks he was motivated by something else.
I absolutely think it was racially motivated. What went through my mind was he could shoot me dead on the spot because he was trying to protect the neighborhood and the property.
Remember just 2 months ago, this video went viral. 2 black men racially profiled at a Starbucks in Philly. Starbucks eventually reached a settlement with the men, but Dr. Aguacha says these incidents are more common than many people want to admit.
People feel really emboldened these days to act upon their biases, their racist biases, and to do whatever they want to do because there are no repercussions.
Next wow. Okay, and now I'm getting pulled over. They're gonna pull me over. See, I knew it was there.
300 as at St. Mark's Church, hold here.
All right. We've got my...
On the ground! On the ground! Stop resisting. Sir, you're on video. As FYI. All right. Fine. I got cuffs. Yes, this is my vehicle, sir. I was trying to fix something. Okay. I have evidence. Okay. Well, when we tell you to get down, you got to get down. Yes, sir. I understand. Okay. Now, why am I being put in handcuffs? We got to verify the cars stolen. E-4-1334, Illinois. My name is Lawrence Anthony Crosby. I'm a PhD student at Northwestern University in the Department of Materials Science and Engineering. I purchased this January 23rd, 2015. From Libertyville Chevrolet. I have all the evidence. Ask me who are registered to. Myself. You're registered. 7-3.
Wow.
This woman don't want to let a little girl sell some water. She called police on an 8-year-old little girl. You can hide all you want. The whole world gonna see you, boo.
Yeah, and illegally selling water without a permit? Yeah.
On my property. This woman don't want...
Welcome back to CBS This Morning, Saturday. We begin this half hour with another incident of a minority being targeted while performing everyday activities. A South Carolina woman is facing assault and battery charges after being accused of hitting a black teenager at a community pool.
How's that feel? Get out! Get out! Get out now!
A camera caught Stephanie Sebi Strimple last month as she appeared to verbally and physically assault 50-year-old Darshawn Rockamore Simmons, also known as DJ. We spoke exclusively with DJ and his parents who believe he was targeted because of his skin color.
She called me the N-word and she called me a punk.
15-year-old DJ says he was invited to the pool by a friend when Stephanie Sebi Strimple approached him.
911. Okay?
Yeah, right.
Get out.
He says she physically and verbally assaulted him.
In Chicago now, a woman claims a CVS drugstore manager called police on her when she tried to redeem a coupon at his store. The woman, who is black, took out her phone and recorded their interaction. ABC's Janae Norman with that video tonight.
African American. A CVS manager coming under fire, captured on cell phone video calling 911 on a black customer trying to use a coupon.
You can tell them her name is Camilla Hudson. I have ID and will share it.
The manager visibly shaking while making the call.
African American. Black. No, not African American. I'm black. Black isn't a bad word.
Camilla Hudson tells ABC News that she started recording shortly after she handed the manufacturer coupon to another CVS manager.
He goes, well, I can't accept this. So I said, okay, why can't you accept it? Because it looks fraudulent.
She says they never even scanned her coupon to see if it was real. Then the incident escalating. Manager Maury Matson calling 911.
And he says to me, "You should probably leave because I've called the police."
Police tell ABC they were informed a female was threatening staff and refusing to leave. The incident just the latest in a string of episodes caught on camera of white people calling the cops on black people for everyday activities, like these two black men arrested at Starbucks shortly after one of them tried to use the bathroom.
In Chicago now, a woman claims.
So what they're saying is that, again, we took 20 minutes, but this group right here was right behind us. So if we took 20 minutes, then that means that they came off of hole 9, and they have not yet hard off on hole 10, then the group behind us had to take 20 minutes to get from 9 to 10.
It's 120, you got off the green at 12:45.
And so they're saying they want to kick us off the hole, and this is former Commissioner Steve Chronister.
Congratulations, you're a real winner.
So they say they want to kick us off the hole because we took a break in between the holes, and the people behind us had not even teed off yet.
Remove yourself from our premises in the next 5 minutes, please.
Because the authorities have been called.
All right.
Back off, okay? Yes, back off.
They don't what you want.
Yep, this is what she does for a living.
It's fine.
Okay.
They asked you 3 times now to remove yourself from the premises. You have yet to remove yourself.
Why is it that we took? Why did you say you removed us from the premises? What was the conversation? You came to us. We were trying to tee off, and you came. 5 of you men came up to us.
So we said, "Hey, can you move along quicker, please?"
No. We were just about to tee off. The group took a beer break, and so we were about to tee off, and you just came to us saying we had to leave.
All right.
I don't appreciate you getting me on video.
It's a public place, and you wouldn't be involved if you didn't say anything. And so now they're just starting.
Leaving? I've never had a conversation with anyone.
They're just starting to tee off now after they got their soda, they got their drink. Yeah. Now they're just starting to tee off. Yeah. And this is the group that was behind us the whole time.
Yeah.
So what they're saying.
Sir, what's going on?
Gunshots in the store.
Gunshots. And a 22-year-old black man, John Crawford, lay dying on the floor of a Walmart in Beaver Creek, Ohio. Shot and killed by a white police officer, as seen here on surveillance video, almost immediately when they approached him. Crawford had been in the store for several minutes, holding a gun and talking on his cell phone. An eyewitness named Ronald Ritchie called 911.
There's a gentleman walking around with a gun in the store.
Is he got it pulled out?
Yeah, he's like pointing at people.
What does he look like?
He's a black male, probably about 6 foot tall.
Police were dispatched to the store, thinking they were headed to an active shooter situation based on the witness who called 911. They didn't know Crawford was holding a toy gun he had picked up in the store. 5 weeks later, the 911 caller told the Guardian newspaper, quote, "At no point did he shoulder the rifle and point it at somebody." He also said something similar to our CNN affiliate WHIO.
He wasn't actually like holding it to getting ready to shoot somebody.
Ronald Ritchie has not returned our calls for comment, and neither the police or the state attorney would talk to us about Ritchie, who is an important witness to the case. Crawford's girlfriend had been waiting in their car. After the shooting, police questioned her, accusing her of lying, asking her where Crawford got the gun, even saying she appeared to be high on drugs.
You understand that we're investigating a serious incident. You lied to me, and you might be on your way to jail. Where did you get this gun?
Sir, I don't know. Later in the 90-minute drilling by police, word came that Crawford had died.
Well, to let you know, unfortunately, John has passed away as a result of this. What happened there wasn't a good thing.
Less than 2 months later, the grand jury's decision was announced.
The grand jury deliberated, and they returned no indictment. They decided that the police officers and the police officer...
There's nothing right about this, and there's nothing right to call the police on someone just because of their skin tone.
It's what 22-year-old Jordan McDowell experienced while buying snacks inside a Santa Fe Allsups on Cerrillos.
The first thing that popped in my mind absolutely was just discrimination.
Recorded on cell phone video, an employee called police to kick Jordan out and said this.
This is being the
because he's black.
Oh, so I'm arrogant because I'm black? In that moment, only thing I felt at the small moment was rage.
He went to Allsup's around 8 last Friday night for candy. As he paid for some, then looked around for more, Jordan noticed something.
She had been in the corner the whole time watching. They said I was sketchy because I picked stuff up, put stuff back.
The employee called police.
And I want him out of the store right now. He's just being arrogant because he's black.
Police spoke to Jordan and the employee, but didn't take any action.
We confronted the employee today inside the store where she made those comments. She first denied saying anything. We played her a copy of the video. She still denied saying anything and then refused to talk to us.
Racism in America never truly died.
A pre-med Xavier University student, Jordan has been in Santa Fe for 2 weeks studying Native American culture. He says he doesn't harbor bad feelings, but wants others to know what happened.
I just want everyone to know that you still have a voice. There's nothing.
Wow. I let those play through because I just wanted to give you, they were basically self-explanatory. And we're familiar with this now because it's happened so much. Some people have the idea that it's not actually happening more, is that we have more cameras, but it actually is both. It is happening more because it is part of the take back the public space. White people are taking back the public space. And they're saying, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. And we will call the police. And think about this. When the police get called on a black person, we know, and they know, the people calling the police know that you can perhaps be arrested, you might be beaten up, and you might get killed. So when they call the police, they're wanting one of those things to happen. Okay? Now I saved two for last because they affected me so much. And they are the epitome of the public space take back. And it's based around, as I said at the beginning, I said, white fight. See, they're digging in, they're fighting back. See, before they packed up and left, but now they're taking it back. And so they're fighting back. So it's white fight because of white fright. And if you listen to the police, if you listen to the white folks that call the police, especially white women, right? They say, oh, I was afraid. I was afraid. The police say, I was afraid for my life. I was in fear of my life. White women say, oh, I was afraid. I saw a black guy. That's white fright. Now I'm going to show you a short video of Stephon Clark's murder. And it's going to be kind of interesting because it's 3 different angles. And then I'm going to go straight to one of the worst situations that we ever saw with our children and the police. And then we'll close.
All I can tell is he's got a hoodie on. He's running towards the front yard of 29th Street. 29th Street. He's looking into another car that's in between the fence and the front yard. Started ground unit Scott, so it looks like might be getting one at gunpoint.
Hey! Show me your hands! Stop! Stop! 5-7 south. Show me your hands! Gun!
Sorry, shots fired, shots fired.
Copy, shots fired. Show me your hands! See your hands!
He's down. No movement. We're going to need additional units.
All I can tell is he's got a hoodie on. He's running towards the front yard of 29th Street. 29th Street. He's looking into another car that's in between the fence and the front yard. Started ground unit Scott, so it looks like might be getting one at gunpoint.
Hey! Show me your hands! Stop! Stop!
57 South.
Show me your hands! Gun!
Sorry, shots fired, shots fired.
Copy, shots fired. Show me your hands! Let's see your hands!
.570's down. No movement. We're going to need additional units.
Yes, a flashlight.
I got a flashlight, my nigga.
Oh shit! Oh shit, bro. This nigga fell. Do you see him? Hey, let me go give it to him. Let me go give it to him. No. Hey, let me give it to him.
I want to give it to him. Fuck you.
Hey, it was his. No, it wasn't his. It wasn't his. It was his.
I'm just saying, don't take off running when the cops get here. What's up, man? Oh, thank you.
It was
some guy.
one of these
Okay, guys, I appreciate it.
None of them were involved.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
It was guys. It was that guy.
Whoa, sir, get on the ground.
Hold up, sir.
I told you to stay. Get your asses down on the ground.
Yeah, bro, we're hoopers.
Get your ass out of here.
I didn't do anything.
Change back.
I didn't even do anything. I wasn't even in here.
Yo.
I wasn't even in here. Who is you, Georgie? We just got here, man. Hey, Cox, man. What the heck? Sir, we just got here. Sir, we just came for a birthday party, please.
We'll figure it out now in a minute.
Please, sir.
I don't care. Sit down. Sit down.
Yo, Richard, what color was it?
It's navy blue.
I know where it is.
That's a baby. So right now you're staying. Don't make me fucking run around here with 30 pounds of goddamn gear on the sun because you want to screw around out here. Y'all keep standing there and run your mouths. You're gonna go too. Get out of here. I already told you. Leave. I don't care. Leave. You're leaving now. You're leaving now. You are leaving now. Leave. That way. Get your ass going. Keep running your mouth. Leave.
Yo, Jelfer, what the fuck is going on? Why is he acting so crazy?
Hey,
doing this shit. He's fucking abusing her. He pulled out his gun on her.
No, I didn't. Get your butts out of here.
He pulled out his gun on her.
I don't know. Y'all hit me too. Hit me in the face. Okay? Abuse. You know that,
Get out of here or you're going too. Move my ball. Jordan.
Laura.
Adrian, you good, bro? Adrian, hey, I'm gonna tell you one more time, get your ass out of here. Y'all get across the street. Adrian, across the street, you're going too. Adrian.
Those are my cousins. Those are my cousins. Like,
Sir, we just came here. Let me explain something to you all again. I personally told you to get on the ground and stay, didn't I? And what did you do when I walked away? So you just did what everybody else did. And what everybody else did was illegal. You did it, and you got caught. They didn't. Now you're sitting here paying for it.
We just came in from work.
I don't have a problem. That's not my problem. I asked y'all to sit. You became a part of the mob. You could have been the guys that were doing right, and you weren't. So now you're sitting here in trouble. You're going to sit here until we get this figured out.
Ooh, boy. You know, I played that entire piece because I wanted you to feel what I felt watching it. I don't think I've seen anything that so demonstrated the utter racism of some of these police and how that one police, he was allowed to just run berserk on those children. And if you notice, he only dealt with the black children because there were white kids all around. In fact, the person who shot the video on his phone was a white boy. He didn't say nothing to him. He didn't say nothing to the other white kids. All he did was sort out the black kids. And when he attacked that girl, that was an attack. That was an assault. And so I wanted that to be there to demonstrate clearly what white fight means. I mean, he came in thinking he was John Wayne or somebody and acted a fool on those children. And I don't know if you saw it, but there was one black man who came up after a while, and he didn't even have, I guess he said, well, it's nothing I can do, this to police. So he stood there and he watched and he tried to talk to some of the kids. And when the police would tell him, get out of here, some of the other kids, he would tell him, go on, get out of here. And so I guess he called himself observing, but all of that was illegal as hell. So I'm going to close with that. Yeah, it happened in Texas. That's right. It happened in Texas. But it was one of the earlier incidents that let us know what was coming. Okay? It let us know what was coming because we've seen it over and over and over again. And so we need to understand it's not anything new. It's a continuation of the policies and the beliefs of the people in this country. So many white people, not all of them, but so many of them, who believe that this space is theirs. The public space is theirs. And this fight back is about making us feel so uncomfortable that we don't want to go into these spaces. And they can have their space back private the way they want it without you black people around. So we need to understand it and be prepared for the next stage. Because there's going to be a next stage, you know, beating us and killing us and abusing our children and our wives and our daughters and our sisters and our mothers. That's not enough, because too many of us still want to have access to public places. And so be prepared. There's going to be a next level and a next level. All right. Thank you, Clyde. As always, I say, what? I say, no justice, no peace, no love, KNOW. And I close out with a little bit more, but we're gone.